Hey, it's Ken Lewis. Welcome to Mixing Night. Today I'm going to show you how to organize your mix session. I know you probably have a messy mix session. I used to as well. Trust me, if you're going to start mixing every day, you want to clean your mix sessions up, get them really well organized. I'm going to lay out 7 easy steps to follow to get your messy mix session cleaned up and ready to go. Number 1, get organized. Make sure everything is in one main folder. Right here I have the artist and song title. Kings is the artist. The song title is Selfish. Within this, I have the audio stems folder, and within the audio stems folder, I have it further separated out to instrumental stems and vocal stems. Then I'm going to evaluate the stems and check the sample and bit rate. I can choose any one of these stems. It doesn't really matter. I'm going to highlight it, and on a Mac, it's Command-I. And that brings up the information box. Right here it tells you sample rate is 44.1 on these particular stems. If it was a different sample rate, it would tell you right there, 96, 88, whatever it is. And then bit rate is 24-bit. So the next step when I set up my DAW, I'm going to need all of that information in order to set up my DAW correctly. So the next thing I'm going to do now that I know my sample and bit rate is I'm going to see if the stereo files are actually stereo or if any of them are just mono, and we can get rid of half of the audio, which would save us DSP power. It will save us hard drive space. So I fire up Stereo Monoizer, I highlight my stems, and I just drag and drop. If we drop the vocal files into Stereo Monoizer and analyze them, all of these are stereo files. Again, if we go back to this folder here, all of these say 52.8 meg. Watch when I process in Stereo Monoizer, when they're converted, you see what happens to the file sizes. All but 2 of them went from 52.8 to 26.4. So I've saved a ton of hard drive space. That's also going to tax your DAW a lot less. It just has less data to read off of the hard drive and try and reproduce. You're going to have less DSP because your plugins are only processing a mono channel instead of a stereo channel when they only need a mono channel. So there's a whole lot of unforeseen benefits to doing this. Number 2, set up your DAW. So now I'm going to create a new session in Pro Tools. I've already figured out my sample and bit rate from step 1, 24-bit, 44.1. So here we are, 24-bit, 44.1. Interleaved, and I'm going to create a session. It's going to ask me where to put it, and I'm going to put it in the Kings Selfish folder. Selfish, KL Mix. And then I'm going to name the session the same, Selfish, KL Mix. Okay, now I have to set the tempo and key of my song. This is very important because you don't want to be fumbling for auto-tune settings in the middle of a tracking session or in the middle of your mix when you just want to be flowing creatively. So I've got this set to 89 BPM A minor. Now, if you didn't know what the tempo was, you can get a number of different tap tempo programs downloaded to your phone. Just in the App Store, Android or Apple is probably there, and you just tap it out. You just let the record play and you tap out the tempo, and it tells you on your phone how many times a minute you're tapping, and that's what you enter into the tempo, and it should be locked in. And then you check it and make sure that that you stay on grid. Step 3, finally importing those stems. I'm going to import all of my music first, and then I will import my vocals because I find it easier to organize when I bring in the music and then all of the vocals. They're just in a different section. Okay. Add, done. Now that my instruments are in, I'm going to import my vocal tracks just so they're below all of where the instruments are. Okay. Vocals, all, add, done. Now I'm going to color code my vocals so I remember where they are. I'm just going to color them all pink right now, just as a placeholder coloring so I don't get them confused with all of the instrumentals. Now that they're imported, I'm going to look at the name titles. These are actually pretty good and nice and short, but often I get these audio file name titles that are like 20 or 30 or 40 characters long, and the name box only fits but a few characters. So I want to make sure that all of my name files are as short and descriptive as possible so that as I am scrolling up and down my session, I can very easily see what my track actually is instead of some jumble of numbers and letters that makes no sense to me at all. Now I'm going to strip silence all of these tracks before I start organizing them into groups. And I want to strip silence them first so I can more visually see how they go together in the session. What plays when other things play with it, and that might help determine how I organize later. So you highlight the file that you're on and hit Command U. This brings up this strip silence box. So for me, my main strip silence settings are usually a threshold of about -85 or -86. I set up a start pad of maybe 100 to 200 milliseconds, and I usually start an end pad of about 1200. And you can see how much we get rid of there, and you just hit strip, and everything that was silent around those parameters is now gone. And you can go through the entire session and do that for every single track. Here you can, in Pro Tools, you can up just how big you actually see the waveform. I didn't just turn it up there. You see a huge difference. All of those silent patches are now gone. So careful where you set your thresholds on strip silence. You don't want to set it so tight that you get rid of your reverb trails and the ends of your words and things like that. But you don't want to set it so loose that you have, blank files running all over your session. Now that everything is strip silenced, I'm going to organize it. So let me go through this and just organize the session into how I would mix it. So you can pretty much see how I've laid out my entire session top to bottom. This is almost every session that I do has some form of this layout. 808s up at the top, followed by my drums, heaviest to lightest, so kick, snares, claps, hats, open hat, percussion loop, rides, clap fills, all of these smaller like momentary drum hits. Then next is my bass. And then after the bass is usually whatever the most important instrument is. In this case, it's the main guitar, and then the verse guitars. All of the guitars I have grouped together. I usually group similar instruments together once I pass the bass. Keys are next, and then the pluck. And then you see this whole group of instruments all kind of goes together. Vocal chops, chop layer, white noise, brass stabs, and then finally we have effects, followed by all of the ad-libs and backing vocals, and finally lead vocals at the very bottom. So that's how I generally lay it out top to bottom. Now I'm going to go through and color code it. I find color coding super important. It allows you to scan your session very quickly and easily and know exactly what you're looking at. So a couple examples for me would be drums usually get blue, bass lines and 808s get purple, backing vocals get pink. You get the idea. So I group all of these things together both in the session and within the same color. It definitely helps your brain stay in creative mode and out of technical mode. So my 808s are always purple, just because. Kicks are always dark blue. Okay, so once this is laid out, you can see it's just visually much easier on the eyes. It's well organized. You don't have to think about where your tracks are. You know your drums are at the top, the bass is right after that, the meat of your music is in the middle, then your vocals are at the bottom. You can scroll around your mix session very fast and easily, get to where you want to get quickly and easily. Step 5, add your effects auxes and master fader. Usually I start my sessions with 6 stereo auxes for effects. And then I just assign bus 1 and 2, 3 and 4, 5 and 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, and 12. Boom. The other thing you want to do on your auxes is called solo isolate. On Pro Tools, if you press Command and click, you see the S go gray. What that does is if you have bussed something to this, bus 1 and 2, then and you solo the source track, it won't mute the bus. So you actually hear your reverb returns. If you're soloing a track that you know you put reverb on and you're not hearing it in solo, what you need to do is back up and make sure that your aux tracks are in solo isolate. All of those S's need to be gray. There you go. So I've set up 6 auxes. I'm going to set up a selection of reverbs and delays, something that I feel after listening to the rough mix a few times might be good selections that are going to help me in my mix. I can always change them as I go. Okay. Next, I'm going to add a stereo master fader. I don't know, every year I probably get 5 or 6 rough mixes in from clients that are in mono. And I know what they did when they set up their master fader, they set up their master fader in mono instead of stereo accidentally, or they probably put a mono plug-in across their stereo master fader, or they bounced in mono instead of stereo interleaved. One of those 3 things almost certainly happened. So I'm going to add new stereo master fader. Here we are. And output A1 and 2 is my main mix bus. Number 6, give yourself less to look at. So I've set the scene for a pretty messy session here, but honestly, this looks just about the way most sessions get sent to me, so I know a lot of you guys out there can benefit from a little bit of cleanup. As you can see, all of these files have all of this writing on it. It's stuff that your eyes don't even need. So I get rid of all of that on the clips. I get rid of the name. I get rid of the clip gain info. You can always momentarily add that back in, do your work, and then get rid of it again. So if I'm doing some clip gain work, of course, it's just an easy click back into the session. So I get rid of that. And on the left side here, I don't need any of that stuff. So I'm going to minimize it. And then I'm going to add back only what I need, which is I/O, and maybe in this case, I'll go inserts, the first bank of inserts. Then I'll go to my mixer page, which is a complete disaster right now. I try to start with only what I'm going to need for, say, the first several hours of my mix, which for me, all of this stuff, if I go to this bottom left corner here, I can pull up what I'm looking at. I don't need to see mic preamps. I'm in a mix. No instruments are showing. Inserts A through E, okay, that'll give me a bucket of 5 plugins. I don't need insert F through J. I don't have any plugins on F through J, so I can hide that. Sends A through E, I'm gonna keep that. I'll keep the meters and faders, I'll keep the in out. Delay compensation, now that I'm sure it's on, I can hide it. Track colors, I like to keep those, that's informative. And comments, I scan to see if there are any comments of value, and if there are, I leave them. If they're not, I just hide them. And this leaves me with a really simplified mixer page, really simple and elegant, gives me a whole lot less to think about so I can keep my focus on the music and keep my focus off of the technical. And finally, number 7, import your rough mixes and any reference mixes. I use Adapter AB Metric from Plugin Alliance for this. It's great for being able to just quickly switch from your mix bus to your rough mix or your mix bus to your reference material. You can load your audio file. I'm going to load in my rough mix first, which is right here. So Selfish rough mix. And then you can sync it here so that it plays perfectly along with your mix bus. Then you can load in different reference mixes here. So if I want to compare my mix bus to, say, Jay-Z or, whoever, then you can load in as many different references as you want into this, and you can very easily switch between mix bus reference, and mix bus reference. So you can use references and your rough mix to inform how your main mix is building, and then finally you can use those to help finish off your mix bus and make sure that your mixes are competitive with what's out there in the marketplace. 7.1, save. Hit the save button. All right, so that's been the 7-step checklist that I go through before every single mix that I do. And it really helps keep me in my creative brain and away from the tech brain as much as possible. I go there when I have to, and I stay in the creative brain as much as I can. I've also created a PDF of this. It's in the links below. You can download the PDF and use it as your own checklist to set up your own mixes and keep yourself in creative lane. On the channel, hey, please like and subscribe. That stuff really helps, and I will see you on the next video. My YouTube channel is the most badass on the block, and you want to be a member. Subscribe right now. Do it. What? Okay, I saw you. I saw that. You got it. Okay, thank you. Thank you. I appreciate that subscription. Peace.